Alright, so right now I'm trying to see if I can climb Mount Olympus in one day. You can't quite see the peak from here. It's fairly high up. This is the beginning of the trailhead, and it's a rather picturesque bridge over a river which I forget the name of. And going up there, that's not Mount Olympus, but there's mountains all over that area. So should be about 7 hours, 6 hours to the top, but I don't trust those estimates. That giant mountain up there is Mount Olympus. Alright, so following along the trail, we've gotten into a fairly nice looking forest. The only animals I could see any tracks of, but they're not here, or maybe some tiny boars running through, but maybe what I think are boar paths are actually places where rivers, or rather mountain springs, flew down. Not flew, what's the word there? Anyway, yeah, it's rather beautiful. The path is a bit steep, but usually it has these sort of makeshift stairs. So that's actually quite nice. It's about 900 meters to the refuge, and about 900 meters ascending from the refuge. So stairs should help along quite a lot. You can see here we're coming to a bit of a clearing, and soon you'll be able to see what I'm seeing, which is this beautiful mountain, gorgeous. Not again Mount Olympus. I assume this is like 2,000 and a bit meters up at most. Our current altitude being about 1,100, 1,200, and Mount Olympus, the mythical peak, being at like 2,900. So anyway, that's that. The trail also involved crossing over some beautiful riverbeds, but they were also rather scary looking at the amount of damage water could make. Rightio. Alright, well, I'm at about 1,400 meters. So it's about 600 meters to go up in altitude, and about 5 kilometers of walking until I hit the refuge, where I'll take a break to have breakfast and potentially stop if I realize I'm way in over my head. My feet are currently okay. It's mainly my back that will start to suffer first from this backpack, which is kind of positioned unideally. Let's see. Once I get to the refuge, I'll be able to throw out almost everything from the backpack, store it there, and go up top with most of my clothes on, with a more minimalist set of equipment based on what the conditions are like. So that will hopefully help. I'm trying to see if we'll come up a portion here from where you can sort of see the peaks. I don't think so. Maybe there in the distance, if you look, it's like the top of the mountain, but it's not it's not any of the peaks, I think. So, well, later. Look at this giant ass lizard. After a few more hours of walking through what might have been the most beautiful parts of the trail, I finally reached Refuge A, where people were unloading some mules. Stayed there for a while to grab a bite, and then I headed upwards with quite frankly, very, very little energy at this point. I'm rather surprised I could even muster the energy to start. So here I am at 450 meters thereabouts. Quite high up. Not high enough to get rid of insects. So I've walked about 1.4 kilometers upwards today, about 7 in total. And I think my diet before this was a bit unideal. So now my leg, potentially due to that, is starting to seize up. So I'm not sure I'll be able to hit the peak. Nonetheless, until it gets worse, I'm gonna keep going because this is very fucking beautiful. One of the reasons I was so exhausted was bad pacing. The other may have been carrying too much stuff, like a laptop for funny photos. Bit pointless. Well, alright, I'm on top. This is the Scoglio Peak. Before I was on the Scala Peak, and as you can see, the view is, it's quite something. It is quite something when there's no clouds, like now. So apparently it is possible to climb Olympus in one day with no training. Mythicus might have been a bit more difficult because it involves some scrambling. And that's theoretically the peak, that one there. It's like 5 meters taller than this one. But I didn't want to risk it given the amount of clouds. Because climbing in thick fog is not my idea of fun necessarily. So I hiked up this one where it's significantly easier. So yeah, anyway, that's about it. This is Olympus in one day. After that came a very long descent, during which I admit I kind of got lost a few times, tried to take some shortcuts, and ended up kind of getting stuck. But I did manage to head down. Some mountain goats, I think they may have been ibexes, showed up. About 3 of them, I think, and must admit it was quite scary being so close to them. Though I know in theory they're harmless herbivores, I didn't fancy them on those high slopes. Anyway, down through some beautiful views that you can now appreciate that you're headed down and your legs are hurting less. I decided to make the potentially not very inspired decision to just head down all the way instead of sleeping at a refuge. Right, yo. Well, I'm back where I originally started recording. And it's been, I believe, the longest hike in my life. Given that I went to Scala, then Scoglio, and now back this way, and got off track a few times. I think it's fair to say I probably walked about 30 kilometers during the 14 hours of walking I did today, and at least 1,800 meters elevation, but given that the path is just winding up and down, probably closer to 2,000 something. So, extremely tiring, no fucking idea how I was able to do it. Apparently it's not that difficult to power through this much walking, which surprises me. Though, I guess, given what I know about humans in general, shouldn't. I think the whole trick was getting myself to walk very slowly compared to what I would have wanted, and that greatly reduced the periods of rest and muscle soreness and tightness and just muscle seizing up, presumably because lactic acid was just not building up at a rate that the circulation couldn't handle. But that's just my hypothesis there. I haven't looked at my heart rate, which should be correlated with this. So that's one data point lost. But then again, I was in a low oxygen environment, so even that wouldn't have been maybe that useful. Heart rate would have been confounded by that. So anyway, now I'm approaching the wonderful rustic bridge that started it all. And to be perfectly honest, I never fucking want to do this again. So yeah, it's apparently possible to climb Mount Olympus in one day. Would I recommend it still? No, I wouldn't. It's beautiful, but if you have no training, doing this in one day is overkill. I went back to my temporary home in Athens the next day, and now it's 3 days afterwards and my legs are still hurting.